Being good at your jobs. The Daystum Institute. Oh yeah. Marquis of Queensbury rules. Oh yeah. Strap in everybody. It's a Q episode. Oh yeah. It's time for the rules of acquisition.
Hello, and welcome again to the Rules of Acquisition podcast, where we will talk about the greatest television show of 1994, or the greatest sci-fi television show of 1994, if you had brand loyalty and weren't into that other one that was on.
Babylon 5.
Babylon 5, yeah, I about said
Yes.
Battlestar. And, man, it's not the few drinks that I've had that have contributed to my memory loss. It's just my shitty brain. Anyways, with me as always is James Nolan
Hello.
and Hugh Crawford.
Hello.
I'm Wade Bowen, and okay, today we're talking about a real favorite of everybody's, I can tell. An episode called Q-less. Joking around, because I get the sense that you guys didn't like this one very much.
This one is.
I was just while you were in the restroom. I quoted Stringer Bell by calling it a 40-degree day. Like, I have nothing to say. I'm here and I'm engaged, but it was a bit of a struggle to find a lot of emotion on my part towards anything going on in the show. Most of my notes involve Vash's fashion choices.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Usually I notice the fashion choices a lot, but Vash's I did not. I always think of Vash the Stampede just because I spent a lot of time in college watching Trigun animes and on Cartoon Network. First, Hugh?
The name of the episode, as we said, was Q-less. It aired on February 7th, 1993. The description is, Q, the Enterprise D's consistent, omnipotent annoyance, comes to harass a DS9 crew when traveling with his traveling companion, Vash, who refuses to travel with Q any longer. That pretty much sums it up. It doesn't really get into the Quark stuff, which is a big part of this particular episode.
And every episode so far.
Well, good, because he's one of the best characters.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the Netflix description just says, Cisco and the crew must save the station from destruction or something. It's like, oh, okay, well, okay, that's not the series blurb, that's for this episode.
That's their form response to most of the episodes.
I might be an anomaly here. I actually like this one.
All right.
Okay, I'm interested. I want to hear your side.
I mean, I took a lot of notes of nitpicky things, but it does a good job. It's a Q episode, and I feel like you either like or hate Q episodes. I don't feel like there's indifference like in next.
I may be indifferent.
Okay, yeah.
In
Next Generation, they bring him on as Roddenberry's atheist god or whatever. It's like,
I don't hate him on Encounter at Farpoint. I don't hate John Delancey. John Delancey's a really good actor. He was good in Breaking Bad. He was good in West Wing. I like John Delancey. I think I hate John Delancey's acting of Q.
mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I think he's supposed to be obnoxious.
True. Yeah.
So I think, I think maybe he's just being effective.
That made a lot of sense, actually.
But I like the Q episode where he introduces the Borg. I actually like that episode in season 2. I think that's a pretty good.
It's one of the shining spots in season 2.
Yes, it is. Maury Hurley's brought that on the show. But I liked that episode a lot. The rest of them, I probably don't remember at all.
Yeah.
I rewatched Voyager last year, and Q is absolutely horrible in those.
Oh yeah.
Those episodes, to me, are almost unwatchable. This, by contrast, is a little bit better. I feel like this, like I've said before, Star Trek Deep Space Nine is a show with obligations. And this is like right off the bat, it's up, got to check the Q episode obligation off its list. And by some strange way, it's like some sort of like character algebra where Q is the common denominator, and seeing how people react to them will be a telling sign of what the audience is going to see from here on out. And, Q's interaction with Sisko serves that sort of purpose.
Yeah.
I have thoughts on that.
All right.
That's what I like, because you're early on in the season. This is like, okay, this is how we differentiate captains or commanders in this case, because Sisko is just a lowly...
yeah.
And then Q knows just how to push his buttons. Oh, that's why you've never had command of a ship. And it was nice that we're like, I liked all the, well, Picard would do this differently. And then they're pretty heavy-handed with, I'm not Picard.
Mm-hmm.
This is how he's different as the leader of the show.
Yeah.
He's easier to provoke. I like that about him. He's a hothead.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce this in, because we seem to have a motif of talking about diversity issues on the show. So I'm just going to say, is there something about it that sort of ruffles feathers, that you have a black captain or a commander, and his response to Q is violence, as opposed to Picard's sort of reasoned sophistication?
Interesting. I didn't even think of it that way.
Oh, really?
That, I guess, could be a little problematic.
I thought about that too. And I think Avery Brooks does a good job of tempering what sort of representation you see on the screen.
Uh-huh.
I think he's very careful not to play the angry black man cliche.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, sometimes he's just confounded by Q. Like when he gives that high-pitched what, I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I have my issues with his high-pitched vocal styling sometimes, but I thought he's very much, he's not like an angry black man. He's just like
no,
a natural response to a regular human, not this enlightened Horatio Hornblower tactician.
And he was provoked twice violently by Q.
Right.
So
I think he's more realistic. I think you want to punch Q in the face. I think everybody who's watching Next Generation episodes and you're watching Q, everybody's thinking as an audience member, why doesn't somebody just punch him? And finally Sisko does. I think Sisko lives in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it too. I know, like, when I watched that, I was like, that would be written different today. That's the only, and I'm not saying that I think it is problematic or whatever, but I think that when I saw it, I thought of it.
It's definitely an interesting observation. Yeah, I think it's smart to point out.
Yeah, I don't think that I believe that it was necessarily, a microaggression to show him that way. But God, I do use the language of social justice warriors quite a bit. So, but okay, so I don't think that necessarily it was that, but it definitely came up in my mind, and it was really the only thing I could think of the first time watching it. That being said, the second time he's like, no, it was cool that he punched him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they are going out of their way to show Sisko as a cooler captain,
right?
Which may be racist in itself, but I think, but I think they're going out of their way to show him as cooler, and punching him is definitely cooler.
Well, it's not like they make him rap anytime or anything. But
no, they don't go overboard. So
Picard's a pretty straight British white guy, straight laced, not But, they just show him like a regular person and not like, let's make him quote unquote urban or something really problematic.
Yes. All right.
But man, I've noticed a lot of things to talk about just nitpicking in this whole episode. Like even in the opening scene.
Oh, Bashir.
Talking about Roddenberry's like utopian vision of the future. Boy, women are boring in the future. If all that it takes to impress him is talking about a math test or...
Well, okay, let's go back to that scene. Because I can't tell, because you have the great authorial eye of O'Brien there.
Sure. The side eye.
In that scene. So, okay, so just to set the stage, what's happening is that Bashir is trying to woo a woman by talking about his medical exams.
Yeah.
And his adventures taking his medical exams.
Yeah, you think he's talking about a fight, but no, he's talking about a test.
Mm-hmm.
And it works every time, he says, like Billy D. Williams.
But I think you're supposed to think that Bashir has never touched a woman in his life. That I think maybe he's supposed to be coming across as that kind of guy who's like a dumb nerd who's just trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and never really sticking the landing. And I wonder, and he's a braggart and he's sort of all show.
Yeah.
That's a way to read that scene. So he thought
well, I'd say that's the way maybe the writers did it. Somebody should have told the director, because the woman is like, oh, impressed by it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's pretty. And then I couldn't tell she's not a Dabo girl, right? She's not a girl that's being paid to be interested.
No, she's a Bajoran, right?
Okay, so he's not telling this to like the Hooters waitress who's acting interested because he'll tip her.
Right.
So maybe you're right, but it is very ridiculous. But I can't tell how it's supposed to be ridiculous.
Yeah, I couldn't either.
I think you're supposed to judge Bashir harshly because of O'Brien's sort of eye rolling and
definitely we're all supposed to be rolling our eyes at him. They should have just made it not work.
You're right,
but whatever.
Have the woman uninterested in it. Yes,
I think that what you guys are pointing out is a problem in general. Like, we don't know, like, that we've had throughout the first 6 episodes, is we don't always know what they were trying to accomplish with any given character scene.
Yes.
So it's something that we come back to over and over again. It's like, what are we supposed to feel about this scene? And you guys both have evidence for both arguments,
Right.
You're both right. You can both make cases that he's supposed to look this way, or no, he's supposed to look this way. But that's just a testament to how poorly directed that some of these scenes are.
Yeah. But though, make note that O'Brien is just not saying anything, and this is a theory of my own that's bullshit, and it doesn't play out really well enough to make it like a good case that it works.
Mm-hmm.
But then, okay, moving on to the next scene, they're struggling to get people out of a shuttlecraft because Dax is. This scene was very confusing to me. Dax is stuck in a shuttlecraft, and then they're like, "Oh, we got 2 life signs readings," and then Bashir's like, "No, we have 3," and then there's only 2 people in there, but really there's 3 because Dax is a trill and she's 2 people, but nobody knows this shit unless they've been paying too close attention. Because then they say there's 3 people in there, but only 2 come out. Unless you know that Dax is a dual organism, that doesn't make any sense.
Wait, I thought that they were reading Q on the ship.
Well, were they? Yeah, that was the other thing. Maybe they're reading Q on the ship, but he doesn't show up on readings anyways.
I think that's what it was. I think you're giving Dax more thought than the writers have given Dax at this point.
Oh, so it was Q that they were reading? Because
yeah, it was Q that
he shouldn't show up on the readings anyway. He's a godlike
entity,
being.
You keep calling it.
But whatever.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
He can show up however he wants.
The bigger issue, that actually is not my issue. The bigger issue with that scene is, we've seen this 1,000 times. Why do you need to open the damn thing? Just go to a fucking teleporter room, teleport them out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. I didn't even think about that.
They do that every time before a thing blows up. Why do they?
I don't understand why anyone walks anywhere on the show. But you're right. You should never have a door opening drama in the show. You can.
Right. Well, usually they don't. They're like, okay, O'Brien, teleport them out of there, and then the thing blows up.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess maybe they're docked and they don't want to take out the station. I don't know. I'm overthinking it.
Oh, you guys bring up an even better point, though. I never even realized this. Why do they have docking pylons in the first place? Why don't you just have everybody orbit the damn thing and transport down?
That's a good point.
I don't know.
Why does it? I mean, the whole damn ship is basically docking pylon, and I have no idea why.
Well,
like the poorest and most ignorant species have transporters in this show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they still have. It makes sense if you think about it. They need backups. If the transporters go down, you have ships coming to stay there anyways. You might as well make a docking port on it, right? And you need a backup in case the teleporters go down that you can do it manually.
Okay, 2 ports. But why do you have to have the damn thing look like a spider in space with its arms, turned inward?
Cardassian architecture. I don't know.
Fucking Cardassians.
Fucking Cardassians.
You're right.
I miss Cardassians. We need to get some spoonheads on the show soon.
Yeah.
I don't think you're supposed to say the S word.
That's racist, James.
I'm racist against Kardashians.
You're not. That's not.
You're a resident social justice warrior. What are you doing?
Well, everybody's racist against something. No,
Sure.
the only thing I've noticed in these early scenes is that Vash is wearing possibly the ugliest jacket I've ever seen on a Star Trek character. It looks like a spray painted Michael Jackson type thing. It was very distracting. And I think the only reason I noticed it is because I think that I found Vash is quite attractive to look at.
Sure.
And apparently me and Picard are interested in the similar women. And
I believe it.
yes. So that was the only thing I've noticed in all of this stuff. That's pretty much. I was also sort of like intrigued that there is a bank at Deep Space Nine with safety deposit boxes.
Oh yeah.
I would like to know more episodes set in the Bajoran bank.
Right, with its Bajoran version of Otho from Beetlejuice.
Yes.
Maybe I'm only thinking of that because at the same film festival where I met Nurse Ratched, Otho is also from my hometown.
Oh, you met Otho?
Well, I saw him at the thing, yeah. He's from Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, really?
As is Nurse Ratched, and they were both at a film festival.
Oh, wow.
I saw them one time. The end.
That's fascinating that you met Otho. The bank scene was laughably long.
It was.
I thought most of the scenes in this episode, I think they were vamping. Like, I think, like, you see her. Let me just go through the first act. How much foot dragging there is in this episode. You see her unpack every item in her bag to put in that safety deposit box. They talk about each item. They place it in. Only one of them has any importance to the plot of the show. But you talk about the dagger, we talk about the statue, we talk about the bag of gems, everything. Then he talks about how to establish a password for her to set up her security system. Then we see her set up her security system. We see her enter her passcode. They see him put them all into the safety deposit box and lock it. Then she goes back to her room. Then you see her unpack her bag twice in that scene.
At least because Q keeps making it reappear because he wants her back.
Yeah, and that's cute, but there is an astonishing amount of just business in this episode. Later on in the episode, during the auction, you see them auction off every piece from her bag.
Yeah. They had to meet their time, their 42 minutes, I guess, and they were scrambling.
You couldn't give Kira a scene. You couldn't give Dax a scene. I mean, like, I don't know. That's the way I was... That's sort of the way I was feeling with this.
Right.
I see what you're saying. I think that they could have had a compelling, like, sea story instead of all the packing and unpacking.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
So that was something that I noticed, is that this scene is going on forever.
Yeah. And then you move on to the Ferengi haggling.
Yeah. That's fun, I guess.
Yeah, that's fun. Like, if you ever need to negotiate with the Ferengi, just jack off his ears. You can get whatever you want.
Yeah, that was... She basically gave him a hando, didn't she?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that basically what we saw?
Yeah, how...
Yeah.
I was...
She just reached straight for that deep.
I'm going to ask this question. Are Ferengi's ears their genitals?
They're erogenous zones for sure.
Yeah, it's their erogenous zone. I think they're lucky enough to have, that's not how they reproduce, but that's how they get off.
Okay.
Which, from an evolutionary standpoint, doesn't make sense to me. But
so when Ferengis are home alone, do they rub their own ears?
Oh yeah,
they look at they go into the holodeck and have web-handed masseuses.
Yeah, there's that. But like, there should be a scene where Nog is like, where Sisko walks into a room and Nog is like rubbing his ears and is really embarrassed about it. I don't know. Leave me alone, man. Leave me alone. And like, what is that?
We'll be right out.
Right. And then they have to negotiate like a payoff to never mention it again.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that most definitely happened. I can guarantee that happened at one point.
Okay, yes. So they...
But actually, it's pretty hard to surprise Quark. It's pretty... And so you got to give it to Vash that she had that skills like right off the bat.
Yeah, it's an interesting character. They went to a lot of trouble to develop. I mean, she's a good character. I don't know the actress's name. I should know that. but I don't. But anyway, I mean, she was a good actress. She was playing a character that had
Jennifer Hetrick.
All right. And I mean, she's good, and like it's a callback. It was been one of the things that I thought was you spend a lot of time developing a character who leaves the entire show like at the end of this episode. So like, I guess that's interesting, but I don't know. At this time where I feel like everybody that I'm supposed to care about is so underdeveloped, why?
Right.
We're spending a lot of time developing characters that.
Yeah, this episode was not about developing characters, but about establishing this show in relation to the next generation.
Yes.
Everything is like, well,
it was.
Yeah, it's character algebra.
Yeah, it was.
So we can put this in the obligation column. This entire, not just that Q was in it, but that Vash was in it, and that it was yet another episode trying to hug bonds with the next generation.
Right. Like if you didn't know who Vash was, you would be like, well, who the fuck is this? Oh, except that O'Brien O'Brien recognizes her. I can't say for certain. Did he even have a line in the episode of Next Generation where she showed up?
Probably not.
No, probably not. And then Q even says at one point, "Oh, you're one of the little people. Like you don't mean shit."
He's like, "I don't even know you." And then
yeah, which I like. This is part of what I liked about this episode in that context. Was like he's like, well, yeah, and also, but that also brings up my point of as they're positioning maybe O'Brien as the guy that sees everything but doesn't necessarily interact or is involved.
Oh yeah.
Like that opening scene. Maybe that's what they're doing with that opening scene where he's rolling his eyes at Julian because he sees everything and is like, yeah, okay. But he can gossip about Vash later. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things to me about this episode is Q's relationship with the actual station. Usually whenever Q appears on a ship, he wreaks havoc and everything's turned upside down. But Deep Space Nine is such a shithole to begin with that they barely notice his presence, really. Yeah. Like the everyday business of Deep Space Nine is not affected that much.
Yeah, that's another thing I liked about this is that it puts him in a different context.
It puts him in the friend zone. He's friend zoned. He's been friend zoned.
And he's like, yeah. And it's like, I'm not going to fuck with shit. Shit sucks here. And then everybody blames him. And he's like, hey, I'm not going to mess with
he's
it.
He's basically Mr. Mixoplex, the Superman.
Yeah.
That's a good call.
That's basically what he's Mixoplex. And there's just no way to get him to go away. Like, you can't say his name backwards and he'll disappear. But he's an amalgamation of all of like the angry space gods in the original Star Trek, just condensed into one like species and character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it seemed like every other episode of the original series had some sort of angry space god that was omnipotent, that knew Abraham Lincoln, or was the form of a crystal, or, you know.
Yes.
And they finally just like, it was deep, they was getting one character to just facilitate all of that.
Yeah, except that the bartender knew Mark Twain on Next Generation.
Yeah.
Right. That was actually really cool.
No, I think that probably ultimately is that Q had so little to do in this episode. I'm not even really sure. I mean, you didn't need Q, and I know for a fact that the story was pitched by one of those writers that was fired in season 1 by Gene Roddenberry. Her name is Hannah Louise Shearer. She was fired in season 1 of Next Generation, and they brought her back on for this. She was one of the 30 writers fired. She was actually had some sort of showrunner position for the last 6 episodes of the first season 1. But the only other thing that she ever wrote for Star Wars was she pitched this episode. Star Trek. And then Yes. Did I say Star Wars?
You certainly did.
I was going to let it slide, but I felt like I had to say something.
You got to edit that out. I can't. We will lose all credibility if they keep that up. Okay. For Star Trek, it was the only thing else she wrote, and it was just a Vash episode. There was no Q. And then the powers that be stuck Q in it.
Oh, man.
Well, that makes sense because she left with Q, you can't. It makes sense from a producer's even like. How did she get to the Gamma Quadrant in the first place?
She could have said, Q, drop me off.
It sounds like they weren't sure that they were going to get the actor to play Q, so maybe she pitched it without him. I don't know.
Well, you see, you guys are getting right. You guys are getting into the thing that I was going to change about this. That's actually what I cannot believe that's a part of the actual story of how this episode came to be. Because my suggestion, if I was going to change one thing, was to split this episode in two and make it a Vash episode. And then give Q his own separate episode.
Like looking for Vash. Or that Vash is still, like, you have one episode about Vash.
No, nothing to do with Vash.
No,
Vash, you solved the Vash in the Gamma Quadrant problem by having one line when she gets, beamed aboard by saying...
An old boyfriend took me there.
I was, the entity known as Q dropped me off for the Gamma Quadrant. And then Cisco says, oh yeah, I was there at the symposium on Q. That's completely feasible. And then she goes about her business. She's such a shady character, and she's so, interesting on a few different levels that she fits really well with the Deep Space Nine world.
Yeah.
That you don't need Q at all.
Well, I agree, but what I like about this as a Q episode is that you're right, that might have worked better, but I feel like a Q episode later on would work worse. It would be what I don't like about Q episodes. What I liked about this one is it was just like him basically just chasing an ex-girlfriend, but it was an interesting human interaction that I didn't have to worry about that. He didn't really give a shit about the station or testing anybody. He's just like, I'm here for her. I'm not going to do some weird tricks like I did with Picard.
Yeah.
I'm just going to, all right, I'm more playful and not, I liked him not being the reason for the conflict. I liked him just being on the sidelines and like commenting on it more than actually being the impetus behind it.
Well, the way you fix that problem is to have him arrive at the station, want to cause conflict, but then realize that the station has got enough conflict that like he's second fiddle and then leaves butt hurt.
Yeah. But then that's like a scene.
Yeah, then you have some interesting like B story with a Bajor and the Cardassians, or a C story with Dax for the first time.
But you're right. You're probably right. Just leave him out of it. Just don't do a Q episode.
You fix that by wedging in a better episode. No. But I wish he had something to do here. Because if you do put it on paper, he could be actively their romance could be more consequential. But he says he likes her. She's done with him. And by the end, basically, it's the same disgust. They try to do the little hook at the end where he kind of knows her and he knows that she's going to go off and try and steal some jewels for Quark or whatever, instead of taking the teaching position or whatever that she was offered. But I still think that ultimately the core conflict never changes. He's pining for her. She doesn't like him anymore. And that's where it is at the end of the episode. And so, like, if you're going to spend so much time on this episode, it's not like riddled with plot already. You could have like I don't know, there could be some sort of change. She could fall into his wiles. She could fall back into his arms or whatever. They could fuck. And then, like, at the end, she realizes that that's wrong because the thing that drives her to steal space squid embryos is also the drive that makes her like Q, and maybe she needs to get away from that. I don't know. And so in the end, she leaves him.
Yeah, well, you can't have Q fucking because that's just that.
Well, I don't mean you know what I mean.
Yeah, no,
but they have fucked, right?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Well, no, the thing that he's above, probably, sure, yeah. But I like that scene at the end, and I thought it humanizes him to an extent. What he likes about her isn't that she's mortal or anything, is that he can see a nebula and actually appreciate it, like the grandeur of it.
I did like that, and I do think that's. I liked that. I think that was.
I like that scene.
It was. I don't know why it was like his little teardrops in the rain speech at the end, but yeah, I like that, and I do like that sentiment is expressed. I wish that was like dressing on a better episode.
Yeah. I mean, I do realize that I'm in the minority that I actually like this one.
I didn't hate it.
Actually, I liked it okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's a C minus or C plus B minus episode.
Okay.
I'd give it a C minus.
And in the context of the whole show, just the other little nitpicky things that I noticed, things that, okay, this just proves that they didn't know what they were doing yet. They didn't have an arc plotted out. They're probably struggling, like in the first couple of seasons of Next Generation. They got on board a little bit faster and started from a better place. But as far as her, she's the utmost authority on the Gamma Quadrant. She's like, maybe I'll write a book, she says at one point. But she clearly doesn't, because she doesn't know anything about the Dominion, which yes, that dominates the Gamma Quadrant. 5 seasons of the show is all about.
Yeah, it seems like that they, more than the Romulans, dominate the Beta Quadrant or the Borg, the Delta Quadrant. The Dominion dominate the Gamma Quadrant.
Yeah,
like anything that was thought or said would have been about the Dominion. So it seems kind of, yeah.
Well, that only proves that she all of her knowledge about the Gamma Quadrant is only through Q's eyes, like what he decided to show her. Because she didn't have any sort of agency in the Gamma Quadrant.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, that's one meta way to read it. But also, especially with that last episode where the guy's chasing the most dangerous game around, like, they don't know. It's
right. The writers don't know.
Because at this point in the season, it's an alien of the week coming through the wormhole.
Right.
That's how they think they're going to do it. And then they realize that people aren't responding. They have to get a general threat, and then they come up with the Dominion later when they figure out how to do things.
Yeah, there is zero. I mean, I think that we all believe now that there's not a piece of paper anywhere where the name Dominion is written on it in Paramount Studios while this was going on. No one had that Dominion sketched out on a yarn board of how they're going to get there.
Right. They're still figuring things out as they go along, which is how television was done in those days, I suppose. 2 very, very inconsequential questions I have about the episode. When Sisko is talking about Vash and Picard, and he says that he doesn't strike me as Picard's type, what was Sisko insinuating with that? That Picard has a stick up his ass, and that she's like a wild, interesting lady.
Okay,
why would Picard want to get that?
In my mind, that's probably right.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Okay, because I read it as, because that's also a way to, like, I don't know. But I was like,
did you read it as, were you reading it through how are they portraying this black man?
No. I was reading it as, I assume Picard was gay. Like, or something like that. No, but that's the way I was like, is he insinuating that he thought Picard was gay? But no, so that was that. And then the most inconsequential thing I noticed is that at one point they have Vash wearing a necklace that fastens to her ears, and that is the most ridiculous thing I've seen in a Star Trek episode.
Yes. Yeah, that was at the end.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Somebody had fancy ideas about costuming that they wanted to apply to the Bajorans, and then just turn it up a notch, I guess, with ear shit. And somebody has an ear fetish between the Bajorans, this ear necklace, and the Ferengi. Yeah.
Outside of that, I got nothing. Does anybody, Hugh, you got anything?
No, I'm just still reeling from the fact that this was supposed to be just a Vash episode, and that they had like shoehorned Q in there, and that was like my main complaint with the episode, is that it felt shoehorned. Like I picked up on what it was actually. Yeah. So.
Oh, another thing I noticed, like they talk at one point when the station's going to blow up in 14 hours. In 2 hours, we're going to start evacuating everybody. By the end of it, we're going to blow up in 12 minutes. Don't tell anybody on the station. We'll just let them know. They're dead anyways.
Yes.
But that's another one of those nitpicky things.
Yeah, and in fact, they hastened it. They had like 18 minutes, and then he was like, let's do it faster so that we can get a clue on where it is. So, yeah. Why can't the ship go through the wormhole? The runabouts do.
Because they're smaller. It's a bigger thing. It's not meant for that speed of travel or that velocity. It would tear it apart.
Okay.
I guess. That makes sense to me.
No, yeah. I mean, that's fine. I was just like, if it's a technical reason, but it just seemed like like they have shields and deflectors, which at some point I need to figure out the difference between those because apparently it's important. But but I couldn't. It seems like couldn't they just hold it together with space magic and like get it through? But
yeah, they did that when in Emissary in the first episode. When travel.
Yeah, they move pretty.
They put the shields to bulk it up to make so they can stand the stress. I guess.
Than a Cardassian attack.
I guess the wormhole just puts more stress than that did. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Do we want to go through what we would change about this? Have we talked about it? But do we have a?
Well, we covered for Hugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys go. I would like to. I would be interested in hear what you guys would change.
You go first, Wade.
Let's see. I don't know. Like I was saying, I actually like this one. I would clear up a lot of those discrepancies I had. Maybe. I don't know. I should have thought of that more.
That's perfectly valid.
I would have, in hindsight, I would have mentioned the Dominion or something, but that's just like, they didn't know what they were doing. That's fine.
It's just tying it in better. Like, I guess I'm starting to get frustrated that certain shows aren't about, like, you get a lot of Cisco in this, and that's good. You get a moderate amount of Cisco in every episode, and you get a moderate amount of Quark in every episode so far.
We've had one where there was no Quark.
And I get why that is. He's good, he's funny, and he was probably a crowd favorite, and it seemed like to me, just as someone who didn't watch the show in the 90s, when I saw Deep Space Nine things, it was always Quark's face. So he was the face of the show. He was like the Data of the show. But I would rather this show, if you're going to spend a whole episode about Vash and you're going to spend a whole episode with Q, tie it like completely with a character that from Deep Space Nine. So, but they do the sort of scatter shot thing where you get a little bit of Bashir, and not much at the beginning. You get, you get like little sort of images here and there. There's like but like I would like it. It's hard for me to say this is a Cisco episode.
Yeah,
and I wish that I could say that.
Yeah. No, actually, I think that you tap into something. Yeah, if I had to change anything, this doesn't stand on its own as a Deep Space Nine episode. This is a companion piece. It's only good in reference to what.
To Q and Vash.
Yeah. Next Generation. Yeah. They talk about Picard all episode. None of their actual ensemble has anything to do in this except for Quark. But he's only there to get his ears jacked off. and then they have one scene where they compare Cisco to Picard. But most of it's not even really about him.
Yeah.
It's like, here's Q, these other things. But it's probably because people love Next Generation. How can we tie it in so that maybe people will watch this?
That's definitely, and I think that's pretty simple as they just don't have I think what you're seeing just in general is that you're seeing writers who don't have confidence in the concept yet.
Yeah.
And I think that you can sum up every podcast we've done so far, except for the pilot, which had a lot of confidence in the concept, even though they did shoehorn Patrick Stewart into the show.
Yeah, but
they didn't shoehorn him in. Well, yeah, they didn't shoehorn him in. It was a natural, function of the story. This, like, they've shoot in the Klingon sisters. They've shoot in Vash. Even the way they've used O'Brien has been shoehorned on.
Totally. Yes.
So,
right.
Yeah.
To the point that it irritates me.
Yes. So, it is very much they don't have confidence in the show. And I think it shows. And I'm interested to see when they get an episode where they do have confidence in the concept. And I think we'll know it when we see it.
I think they could have, here's what they could have done. I mean, Dax has not been used at all. If you wanted to tie Q to an actual member of Deep Space Nine, have Q had a friendship with one of Dax's previous hosts, and Dax has special knowledge of Q, and something there, like where Dax is the only one that could talk him down from something, from wreaking havoc. I don't know. No.
Or some sort of fascination of his with Trill or something. Yeah, and then she knows him. That would be one way to do it.
Sure. Right there, that idea is...
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that would have been at least something for her.
Yeah, some sort of relationship with it. Other than, I know about him because I went to a conference once.
Right.
Right.
Which they really do say.
The Q Symposium.
The Q Symposium,
Right.
yeah. So,
But it makes sense that they would talk about that because it's the flagship.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It's kind of boring and heady, but
No, I have no doubt. I did believe that they wouldn't have a conference. I guess I just thought it was sort of...
it's still a little silly.
Weak. It was weak tea, as far as having a Bond on the show.
A work conference.
You have a guy who basically, if you just casually watched Next Generation, would you know who the fuck O'Brien was?
No.
He's one of the little people.
Yeah. So, but he's just there to convey information from one show to the other. And yeah,
Totally.
He leaves in the next episode. I think he's filming Con Air or something. So he's gone for like half the season after this. So
He was in Con Air?
yeah. Yeah, he was.
I thought he was
Yeah.
just in like small Irish films like The Englishman Who Went Up a Hill and Came Down a Mountain or something.
No, he's in Con Air. He's the main antagonist to what's his name?
Nick Cage?
No, not on the ship. The guy that's not on the High Fidelity. What's his name? Cusack.
John Cusack.
Oh, John Cusack.
He's the main foil to John Cusack in that episode, in that show, in that movie, that big dumb Jerry Bruckheimer movie. I think we have better shows ahead of us, but
Yeah,
this
definitely.
is, I mean, even this season and even like maybe even this half a season, but I do think this is starting to wear, and I can see why. If this was the point where science fiction fans started leaving the show and never watching Babylon 5, I don't know how good that was, but it seems like people talk about it as being really good.
Right. I didn't watch it either.
I could see why there was a sort of struggle to keep it afloat.
Yeah, they're both about space stations too, which is
And they're both
problematic.
political, complicated, right?
Right.
So one thing I noticed about this episode that I'm starting to note. So I watched Jessica Jones, and I noticed that this show, and Jessica Jones both have like sort of, strong, sort of motivated, flawed females. And one of the things that I noticed is that a villain in these type of shows is a unwanted boyfriend. And so that's when you start having female sort of heroes and leads, you start getting new types of villains, and one of them is a overly attached boyfriend. So I thought that tied into Jessica Jones, something I was watching, at a little motif that I'm starting to see reoccurring again.
That's interesting. Yeah. See, we're doing great.
I tied this episode to
Yeah, we're bringing Jessica Jones into it. See, this is a timeless show.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yes.
It's worth talking about, right?
Yes.
Jessica Jones is dependent on Deep Space Nine. It would
Deep
not
Space Nine
exist.
and the character of Vash, yes. So,
But or whether that's true or not, I think we're at a good stopping point.
yes.
Anybody else have any final thoughts to add?
All right, I'm done.
Nope. We have better episodes coming up. I think
Yes,
everybody.
the next episode is pretty good. I actually watched ahead.
Oh, okay.
But it is a Dax focused episode, and it's about Dax, but it's more of a Cisco episode, and it's pretty good.
Oh,
It's it's the one where she goes on trial, and it's written by the DC Fontana,
Oh, fantastic.
who was the original. Yeah,
she was on the original Star Wars Trek.
Yes, and and she was one of those shit talking Roddenberry in Chaos on the Bridge. So
Right.
yeah, so yeah,
All right. 3 to beam up.
cool.
All right. Read a beam up. All right. Thanks for listening. We're done and we're beaming up. The end.
Bye bye.
Please follow us on Twitter at AcquisitionPod and on Tumblr at the Rules of Acquisition Podcast.tumblr.com. Send us an email at rulesofacquisitionpodcast@gmail.com. You can turn this off now. It's pretty pathetic that you are still listening. Do you not have friends, or a hobby that is not Star Trek podcast related? That is possibly why people are fearful for the future of our society. We believe in you. We know you are better than this.